Welcome back, Art World. This is the Art World podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Miss Art World, or Catherine. I have my co-host with me, Lisa.
Hey, guys.
And I always say this is an exciting episode, but this is truly an exciting episode because we have Plastic Jesus here with us.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming on and welcoming us into your studio. This is awesome.
Thank you.
All right. So,
Plastic Jesus is located in LA. You're originally from Britain?
I'm from London originally.
London? Yeah. Okay. And you're anonymous?
Yeah,
right?
I tried to keep my identity pretty secret, yes.
Do you know, I could guess why, but could you share with us why you choose to keep yourself anonymous?
Yeah, there's actually a number of reasons. Firstly, some of the work I do is illegal, and in itself there's other work which isn't illegal, but if you're seen on the street, you're seen in a video or a video podcast or something, they can then tie all the other pieces of work to you. I know a guy who from down in San Diego that was arrested, and they kicked his door in at 4:00 in the morning, and when they took him to the police station to be interviewed, they got a whole great file of every other piece of work he'd ever done. They'd been building up this intelligence file on him. So, although it might be fine to show my face here, if this is a video type of chat, then, there's all the other stuff that I've done as well. The other reason is as well, which is in a way to do with the message that I'm putting out there. I want the piece of art and the message to be self-contained, for the message to come over in the mural, in the installation, in the, product bombing, in the actual piece itself. Not this was done by street artist Plastic Jesus. Whenever you see a story about Banksy, the first 3 or 4 paragraphs will be about the new piece that he's done in London or Paris or LA or whatever. And then there'll be 10 paragraphs after that saying, who is Banksy? The mysterious, elusive street artist. And then it's kind of missed the point. He's doing stuff to get a message over. So, I think if I can avoid that kind of fame and celebrity culture that sometimes art attracts, then great. And I'm not a very sociable person. I hate people. So if I can hide,
really,
like a true artist,
if I can just
but
curl
you're so
up,
nice.
no, it's all a big act. If I can just curl up and hide for the rest of my life, that'll suit me fine.
All right. So I have a follow-up question with that. With when you do some pieces, like the big 3D sculptures, for example, the Oscar doing the cocaine.
Yeah.
And you're going to install that. Do the people putting on the event, are they aware that it's coming in, or is it a surprise?
Oh no, it's all done guerrilla style.
Nice.
Nobody knows. It's just myself and a close team.
Yeah.
That help with the installation sometimes. Sometimes I do them by myself anyway, and nobody knows. I just go out at 4:00 in the morning. I dump the thing on Melrose and then crawl off home. But where there's a team of us, it's only a small team, because I don't want cops there in waiting for us, or in the Oscars, in the case of the Oscar piece, I don't want the what is it called, the Board of Commerce or Change of Commerce to be there waiting, to pull us away when we land there.
That's got to be kind of an adrenaline rush, or are you used to it at this point?
With the installation pieces, I'm kind of used to it, I think, because realistically, if the authorities come, if the cops come and you're doing installation, probably they'll just tell you to clear it up and fuck off. It's unlikely that they'll put you in cuffs. I mean, they could do. They're entitled to. Legally, they could do. But believe me, the 4 a.m. nighttime mural run along Melrose still has the same adrenaline. Every time you go out, you don't know if that's the time you're going to be busted. So the adrenaline's still there, and the relief once you get the piece up and you're heading off home.
For sure.
Are
That's
those
awesome.
When you're doing more of a mural, is it usually very quick that you're just running in, spraying or painting, and then running out, or does it take you a couple hours?
No, I mean, I try and get the longer you're out there for, the more chance you stand of getting busted. Most street artists that I know that have been busted are literally caught with a spray can in their hand at midnight or 2 a.m. or whatever time they're out. It's not a concerted investigation effort, unlike the guy down in San Diego I was telling you about. Usually it's them getting caught. So I try and do a piece as quickly as I can. one of these people that lays out lists, that lays out things, that lays out projects. So what I actually do is I'll have the stencil, the spray paints, the duct tape, the scissors, everything laid out in my truck almost to military precision. So it's just a matter of, right, I want the black can first, that's there, I need the white can second, I need the grey can third, I need the duct tape first. Even down to things like, if you're holding a stencil against a wall, you can't do it with masking tape, it'll fall off, so you use duct tape.
Okay.
Now, duct tape is noisy when you peel it off the roll, so what I'll do is I'll peel the duct tape off the roll in 4-inch pieces and stick it down the length of my leg. So then when I'm there in front of the wall, I just peel a piece off my leg silently and put it up on the stencil. So even down to little things like that, just, if you can save 10 seconds, you save 10 seconds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Has there ever been like a close call, or have you been caught and they let you go because they were nice cops? Or
Yeah, well, I was arrested in London a few years ago. I was doing in Camden in North London, and I should have known London has got so many CCTV cameras all over the place, and in particular Camden in North London. I mean, the place is absolutely flooded with CCTV cameras. But I went out at 4 a.m. and got arrested. They'd seen me and they'd seen the car I was getting into and radioed the license plate through and arrested me. And the cop who arrested me was actually quite apologetic because I was doing Stop Making Stupid People Famous. He said, buddy, I agree with what you're putting up there. He said, but I can't agree with the way you've done it, so I'm going to arrest you. So they took me in, they gave me a caution. I admitted to it. There's no point. They got me bangs of rights, as we say. And they let me go a few hours later. And he said to me, don't quote me on the record. He said, but next time don't do it in Camden and you get away with it.
Keep doing it, just not here.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a time on Melrose I was caught as well. I'm normally very good. As a journalist, I used to do a lot of investigation work, which often would include stakeouts. Now, sitting silently in a van or even in bushes on some crime investigation, fully camoed up with long lenses and binoculars, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very good at using my ears. So if I'm on Melrose, you can hear a car coming at night time, long before you can see it. So, if I hear a car at one end of Melrose, I'll get out of sight. All my paints are always hidden until I'm actually using that one can. But on this occasion, a cop car with its very slow-running V8 engine kind of rolled down a street opposite to where I was painting. I didn't hear it. And they questioned me, they cuffed me, they sat me in the back of the cop car. And after 10 minutes of questioning and radioing through, find out there's no warrants, they let me go. I think the English accent helped. And the cop did say to me at the time, once they took my driver's license and checked it through, they said, hey, we're surprised how old you are, because I'm like 50. I said, dude, I'm surprised how old I am. Seriously.
I just keep getting older.
Yeah,
It happens.
just happening. I don't know where it all went. Yeah.
I'm mad about it too. That's awesome. So, what was, I don't know, your breaking point, or when you switched from journalism to art? Like, when did you make that big switch?
I came here to the US in 2007 as a news photographer. In the UK, I'd got an agency that I ran, my own agency, with 5 photographers and reporters working for me. I came out here on a few assignments, and it was I think the last time I came here before I moved was like November. And I was on Sunset Boulevard. I'd had lunch with my brother who was already living out here, and it was beautiful. The sun was shining. Now, if you've ever been to London in November, you'll know that it's none of those things. So it was a pretty easy decision to make. So I packed things up, moved over here. And I was doing a lot of investigation work. I was doing a lot of kind of news feature work, the type of stuff that goes across 2 pages in the middle of the newspaper, which was great. I was doing a lot for the Mail on Sunday and other newspapers, this type of stuff where we'd fly to somewhere in the US and we'd spend 2, 3, 4 days doing this feature for a Sunday newspaper. But more and more of the assignments outside of those that I was getting were becoming reality show celebrity based, which as a news photographer you do, but it's what we call the proper jobs, the real news jobs that keep your sanity. And those celebrity type jobs were becoming more and more, and the real jobs were becoming fewer and fewer. Now, the reason behind that is because you put a picture of from the war in Syria or Libya, a few years back on the front of a newspaper, nobody gives a damn. you put Kim Kardashian on the front of People magazine or Life and Style and In Touch, and the circulation goes up by tens of thousands, and everybody over the media is talking about it. So magazines and newspapers realize where they've got to focus their attention. So I was getting more and more of this celebrity stuff, and it really wasn't my thing. So I started looking at other ways to convey thoughts, feelings, opinions. I'd always been a big fan of Banksy. Not just what he does and how he does it, but the messages he gets over in sometimes a very simple single color stencil. Yeah, great, it's a good picture, but then you think about actually the meaning behind that is quite deep. There's a lot of thought that's gone into that. I remember I'd always been a fan of whether you call it graffiti or street art, and I remember as a child, I was probably about 7 or 8, driving around London with my parents and going through North London, and there was a big wall outside Lord's cricket ground, and it had painted on it in a big wide brush or roller, somebody had painted George Davis is innocent. Now this piece of graffiti during the 70s became famous. George Davis was somebody who was accused of armed robbery, and I thought, well, if he's innocent, why don't his family and friends just go to the police and tell them he's innocent, or why don't they go to the newspapers? And I kind of realised at that point that that's not the way it works, that there's other ways of protesting things, there's other ways to get messages out there. So that was probably when the seeds of subversive art or subversive street art was I suppose laid, for want of a better word. The transition for me was really just, I was, as I say, a bit bored with news photography and looking for other ways to get things out there. I've always been very creative making things, so street art was really a natural progression for me.
Definitely. And was Stop Making Stupid People Famous your first piece?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
It was my first piece, but not my first piece of street art. Stop Making Stupid People Famous actually comes back from my journalism days. When I was going through this period of disillusionment with media, there was a piece in the Huffington Post about how mainstream media is now becoming reality TV show media, and I wrote a comment piece on that explaining that if we want better quality media, we should stop making stupid people famous. Now whenever that piece gets posted on Instagram or whatever, it's always tagged with Kardashian or whoever, but it was never intended to be a criticism of those people. It's intended to be a criticism of us. We are the people who are making stupid people famous. We are buying the magazines, logging onto the websites, watching the TV shows. We are the guilty ones.
Absolutely, we're buying into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I started doing street art, and I figured that was really quite a powerful statement, and it just works well with the whole of what I'm conveying out there, really, I think.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Would you say that that's probably your most popular piece of art, or is there one that kind of stands out that people really recognize you for immediately?
No, I think it's that, which, I'm both embarrassed and proud of. I'm glad that a message has got out there so great, but it's a bit kind of a tabloid message, really. Let's face it, it's not a Picasso or it's not a Van Gogh or anything. You think of the sunflowers, or you think of the Scream. You think of a great piece of art. So to call myself an artist having created that is no great boast on my part. But it's a message which is clearly resonating with people.
Yeah.
Every day I get up and my social media and my news alerts are tagged because that has been posted and reposted and liked and retweeted. I mean, it's literally millions of times now that piece has been put out there and reposted.
Well, I think that's so important because it is hitting home to so many people. I mean, that's huge as an artist to have your message understood and passed on.
Yeah, at the end of the day, as an artist, the message you want to convey is within your piece, whether it's a political message or a message of beauty or a message of geometry or whatever. It's a message. So the fact that it's getting out there, great, and hopefully, it brings other people to my work and they can see other stuff I do.
Speaking of messages, so you have pieces in galleries as well, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that people react to those pieces differently because of the setting? So versus a gallery versus like coming across it in the street.
Yeah, I have pretty strong feelings about galleries. I work with a number of galleries here, across the world really. And I'm very careful about the galleries I choose. They're not the biggest galleries. I could go with other agents and galleries that could probably sell way more, but all the gallery owners I work with I would consider friends and trustworthy. The first gallery I started with, which was in London, in Wharton Street in West London, were doing incredibly well, selling my art to collectors and investors and so on. And then after a period of time, I found they were actually charging 3 times what they were reporting to me.
Holy
And then
nice.
paying me 50% of that. Yeah.
Dang.
I was naive. I just
God.
got into art. I knew nothing about the business. And there's other things they were doing as well that were done purely to maintain their monopoly on my art as well, and restrict any clients coming straight to me. So, I've got a very honest and open relationship with galleries. If a client comes to me and said, hey, I saw your piece in Kraus Gallery or Walkspace LA or something, can I buy it direct? I say, well, you can, but the sale's got to go through them, or they get the price you're paying is still the same. Because it's a long-term relationship I have with these galleries, and as I say, I classify them as friends. But going back to your question more about the setting of a gallery, firstly, as an artist, you want a wide audience as possible. Sometimes that's not in the interest of a gallery. How many galleries have got buzzers on the doors or by appointment only? It's pretty standard within the industry. So that doorway to that gallery is immediately a filter to who can come through and who can see your art. I don't like that. That really goes against my principles and the messages that I want to get out there. It works well for the galleries because they're kind of maintaining or building this exclusivity about your work, which they have to do to really create any position in the world for them. Otherwise, a gallery has absolutely no value whatsoever. But I think things are changing with social media. I get a lot of people that find me through social media, that come directly to me, and I can then build a relationship with them. And by building a relationship, I don't just mean a business relationship. I mean a personal relationship. They give me feedback on my work, or give me suggestions, or give me feedback onto things that I've done, whether they agree or disagree. Both are valid. Is a valid part of a relationship. And I think it's so important for an artist to get that feedback. And if a gallery is there with its entry phone on the door, not telling you who your work is sold to, not telling you feedback from the client or what the client's looking for, that's not good for an artist. You're just there producing art to fulfill that gallery's need to sell.
Dang. So what is one piece of advice that you would give a new emerging artist in your medium or not, dealing with galleries? What's one of the biggest pieces of advice you would give them?
Go and get a real job. No, seriously, there's a lot of advice I can give them. And firstly, I would say, if you're a new artist and you're looking to get with a gallery will take on a new artist for 2 reasons. Firstly, because they're undiscovered, and the gallery can make a lot of money saying we've discovered the next Picasso, the next Liechtenstein, or the next Rembrandt, or whatever. And they will then create this almost exclusive monopoly, this exclusive funnel for clients to buy your work. Now, the value of all artwork is subjective, so the value of your work will be whatever that one exclusive gallery will tell clients it's worth. And they can do a very good job selling your work. The issue comes then is if you decide to part company with that gallery, you have no sales mechanism and marketing mechanism of your own, because everything's been coming through that gallery. So while it might be good short term, it might not be so good on the long term. Also, if you're working exclusively with a gallery, you're limiting your exposure. So sometimes when you start, you might be better just blitzing out, not working exclusively with any one gallery. Try to work at the lower end of the market, even lower price point, because then, if you're trying to sell a canvas for $10,000, you might find one person that can buy it. However, if you're selling an edition of 10 canvases at $1,000 each, that's 10 homes that piece can go into. That's 10 people's lives you're connecting with. So sometimes it's better to work that way and just build a wider network than perhaps an exclusive gallery can do. The other thing is that I can give advice to people in terms of working with galleries. Galleries are going to want something from you. So it's either that exclusivity and the chance to earn a lot of money having discovered you, or there's the other thing they're going to want is know that you can bring something to the equation, to the relationship. So if you go to a gallery and say, hey, I've painted these 3 canvases, do you like them? Would you like to sell them to me, for me? The gallery just gonna tell you to piss off. They got. But if you can go to a gallery and say, "Hey, I've been doing art for 2 years. My pieces started selling for $500. They're now selling for $2,000. I've got a collector base of 300 people. I've got 2,000 people on my newsletter that are dying for me to do a show and expand my work and collection and so on." Then you've got something you're going to them with. You're bringing something to the equation.
I love that advice. And I feel like that's something that we've heard from some of our other artists who we've talked to who've been successful in the art world. It's not as easy as just applying to a call for art and writing an artist statement, but it's making those long-term connections and being professional, giving the analytics and the full picture of what you're providing to create that partnership.
Yeah, I mean, if any artists are on Instagram now, I mean, it doesn't. If you go to your profile, go to insights, and go to your audience, you can see that 30% of your audience are aged between 24 and 35, and they're 65% male, 35% female. 80% of them are in New York or Los Angeles, and 27% are in London or whatever. All these analytics are there, and if you go to a gallery, it won't really change the way they're going to market you, but it will show that you know your business and you know your audience.
Absolutely.
When you're traveling, do you go out and make street art wherever you're going, or is it kind of exclusively in London and LA?
To be honest, since I've been doing street art, I've been to Paris and I've done some paste ups and some stickers in Paris. I've been to London. I haven't traveled. I used to travel all the time as a news photographer. I spent 20 years of my life in airports, so I'm quite happy not to travel now, to be honest. But yeah, I always try and leave a mark in some city that I go to, which is a whole new thing in itself, because loading my truck up with paint at the end of the day, ready for a 4 o'clock, stencil run, 4 a.m. stencil run is one thing, but then taking everything to London or New York or Paris or wherever, and then thinking, right, I'm going out to do a stencil tonight. I've got to find a shop where I can buy paint. I've got to find, buy all these things. I've got to have a look at CCTV in the street. So it's a whole other thing, really, when you go somewhere else to do it as well.
Is the CCTV, are those just cameras that are up on streets in London?
Yeah, they're all big street junctions, and they're usually monitored by a private security company.
Wow.
And if they see anything taking place, they just call up the cops. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's impossible to get from one side of London to the other without. I think you get spotted by, I think it's 4,000 cameras now if you go from one side of London to the other. It's incredible. Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
When you're in a brand new city, when you travel, do you just kind of walk around and find a wall or a place that speaks to you, or is there more of a strategic, rather, other than the camera portion?
Well, I mean, both are true. Really, when I'm doing street art, when I've got a piece in mind or a piece prepared to do, as I'm driving around a city, I'm looking for a wall that your eyes naturally fall on. Subconsciously, unconsciously, as we're driving around somewhere, there's a wall that you just happen to notice. If people have got to crook their neck up high on the roof of a building to see on some wall that's adjacent, tangent to the street, well, that's no good for me. It's got to be somewhere as you come around a corner or you drive along the street, there's that wall there. So what I'll do is I'll find somewhere, I'll then look for CCTV, I'll then look for cover where I can park my truck or vehicle and hide materials while I'm doing it, and so on. So yeah, it's kind of both. Strategically, it's got to be a good high visibility wall, but it's got to be one that I can do without getting busted, ideally.
Yeah. When you're in Los Angeles, do you prefer working with stencils or like the 3D installments?
3D.
Yeah, they are really cool.
Yeah. I love making things, physical things. As a child, I was always making things out of wood. We had a little workshop bench in the garage at home just outside London, and I'd be out there. I remember one year, I think it was probably like November or December, there was snow on the ground. I got my little fur hooded parka on, it's probably about 9 or 10 years old. I was out there at this woodwork bench trying to make a box, and it was so cold I couldn't feel my hands. And I remember going into the house, crying my eyes out because I couldn't make something because it was so cold.
Oh, no.
So from quite an early age, I've always liked, making physical things. And, technically a lot of the things I make aren't that difficult to actually produce, but it's the connection between having that concept, whether it's a 12-foot long line of cocaine in the street, or if it's a 6 foot by 4 foot mousetrap. It's having that idea, that concept, and then perhaps walking around Home Depot and finding what you can use to make it. And in fact, when I live here in Hollywood. My second home is the studio. My third home is probably Home Depot. I hate their fucking politics, but I love what they've got in their store. And, even if I'm out there buying something, I'll walk around the rest of the store looking at stuff and thinking, oh, that could work as a machine gun, or that could work as as a broken whatever. So I'm always looking for things that I could use in some art in the future.
I love that.
Do you always get the 3D installations back, or do they usually are taken by other people, or?
Usually I get them back. I've had I did, in fact, there's a piece on Melrose outside Urban Outfitters which I did, which was, as I mentioned earlier, 12-foot long lines of cocaine, a big 6-foot by 8-foot credit card, and then an 8-foot tall $100 bill sticking out the ground. And of course, people were posing up with it, and I like, as a former news photographer, I like to sit watching at some distance and looking at people's reaction. In fact, that piece, I'm sure 2 people hooked up. There's this guy there and this girl that are looking at it, laughing and taking selfies, and the girl gives her phone to the guy to take a photo, and then I can see they're exchanging numbers. So who knows where they are now, but hopefully they found love and got babies and things. But I remember watching that piece, and this guy and his buddy on a skateboard. One guy was on the bike and guy was on a skateboard with him. They stopped, looked, took some photos, and then the guy on the skateboard bent down and ripped the big credit card off the ground and started skateboarding down the street. So I was in my truck and I just chased him down the street and confronted him. He was really apologetic. Yeah. So yeah, most things I get back, but what I do if I'm not watching it from a safe distance, for security or whatever, what I will do is I'll keep an eye on it, going back every so often, because if a piece gets damaged or broken, I don't want it out there. If it doesn't look good, if it gets fucked up, I'll go and remove it. The other thing about doing installations as well is, you want them to be secure enough that everybody can enjoy them. But if you secure them too much, the city's going to send you a bill for $100,000 for repaving the footpath, and you kind of need to avoid that as well.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. So you do, a lot of your work does have to do with cocaine.
Yeah.
That was my next question.
You guys are getting excited about cocaine.
I know.
Well, I think it's such an interesting topic that you work on, because you're really calling out the issues with the industry's addiction to it, how prevalent it is, how it's almost a norm in Los Angeles, which has always been very weird to me. We talked about it on our way down. I didn't grow up in Los Angeles, and I didn't go to school down here. I went to school in Oregon, and it's just, I was shocked when I came down and saw how accessible it was, how many people were doing it, and how that really does start with, you see it in the movies, and you see it becoming almost this normal thing. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And so is that kind of, I don't want to answer the question, or that's kind of my take on the pieces, but I wanted to hear from you too, the message behind it. And
yeah, I'd be honest that I tried cocaine in my mid-20s. I was a pretty late comer to it, and it gave me such a suicidal depression and anxiety the next day that, Jesus, it nearly destroyed me just that one time. And then I was on a few journalism jobs where we were investigating drug dealers, and we had to go out with them. They think we were dealers, and we were having to do cocaine, and freaking hated the stuff, to be honest. But it's so that's just me from a personal point of view. I don't do it because I don't like it, simple as that. But it's so prevalent within society. Now, in 2000 and 2017, cocaine in the US outsold Coca-Cola. But if you go round to people openly in public and say, hey, do you do cocaine? Everybody will deny it. Well, we're selling more than Coca-Cola. Somebody's doing a shitload of cocaine somewhere. And it's there, it's in society, but we don't talk about it. We have this war on drugs that's been going on for decades, which clearly isn't working. We've got all this situation now currently with immigration due to the situations in Mexico and Central America. Well, a lot of those situations are caused by Americans' addiction to drugs that are coming here illegally. So you can't blame the people in those countries for the deprivation, the gangs, and the trafficking that's going on. We are to blame. We're buying the stuff every Friday night before we go clubbing. So the point of some of my pieces of cocaine is really to highlight that. In fact, going back to that one on Melrose, those 12-foot long lines of cocaine, the purpose behind that was that people would say it was kind of I wanted to connect with people in a number of ways. Firstly, I wanted people to say, wow, this is fucking crazy. This is, all this cocaine on the street. But there were people who were coming out of Urban Outfitters or Starbucks who were walking straight past this, not even noticing it. I thought, what a great metaphor that is.
Yeah.
You've got so much cocaine in society and nobody's noticing it. Nobody's talking about it. So really, that's where my angle for it comes. I think we need to have a dialogue. We need to possibly legalize a lot of drugs out there. The drugs that we legalize, alcohol, tobacco, etc., are controlled. It's a lot cleaner, it's a lot, in the way it's controlled. There's also not the horrific number of deaths and crime that goes on associated with those drugs. So we need to change things.
A lot of your other work that I've seen has to do with politics, mainly with Trump. Do you make those pieces to have a stance on certain issues, or are you making them more to challenge people to think about what they believe with politics?
Well, until Trump came into the political scene, my stuff was political, but it was more done in a way to say to people, hey, look at what we're doing, let's consider what we're doing, let's think possibly about other routes. Then Trump came onto the scene, and I realized that I was trying to be impartial, but no, because a lot of what he was doing just goes totally against my beliefs, my morals and ethics, that, you have to stand up and say, fuck you to some people sometimes to get them to listen. So that really, that's why I changed there on in terms of the Trump stuff, because I think that we need to call people out. We need to hold authority to higher standards and question what they're doing, why they're doing, and what the short-term and long-term goal and gains are. And I don't think we're doing that enough. Too many politicians are getting away with far too much, and we just accept it. So really, that's why I call out so much in terms of politics, really, with my work. For me, it's a major thing. I'm a real news junkie, and in fact, I've only last week I deleted all the news apps off my phone, because I'd take my stepson to school, which was 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back, and I'd have CNN on. I'd come in here, I'd put on a news podcast. I was probably listening and reading 3-4 hours of news a day, and it's not good for your mental health doing that. It's really not. Switch the news off for a few days. Listen to some chill house music or some 70s groove, and the world is a much better place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, especially when the news is so polarizing right now.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally.
It's too
believe
much
me,
to be inundated.
Yeah, if you stop listening, if you're like me, fixated by the news, and you're listening to every spit and cough on CNN or Fox, you probably won't be listening to this if you listen to Fox, but whatever, there's so much analysing done on a minute detail. Turn the news off for a day or two, come back to it, and everything that's gone in those 2 days doesn't mean a toss. Nothing's changed. You haven't really missed anything. I'm not saying don't engage with it, but don't engage in the detail we're doing.
Mm-hmm. I like that message a lot.
With your newer work, so we're in your studio, which is super cool, and one of my favorite pieces that you recently posted is the red balloon.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of your newer work and where you're going with that and thought process? And
well, I think the balloon came about actually from Art Basel in Miami last year. I was part of a small show there, and the theme was love stories. And I was invited to be part of this show, and I thought, well, how does my political, social commentary news work? How can I do something on love stories? Yeah. It's just kind of not really. So what I did there was I wanted something with a kind of ironic twist to it. So what I actually created for that was 3 balloons, one with a Band-Aid on it, one with a stiletto heel embedded in it, and one with a knife in it. And each one had a hang tag on it with an ex-girlfriend's name from it. So it had that irony that my work has. Well, I told my girlfriend they were just random names. They were fact, some of my ex-girlfriends on social media commented.
Oh.
They were cool with that.
Yeah.
They were cool. So that was a way in which I could bring some kind of ironic, almost subversive humour to something which, as a theme of a show, you wouldn't immediately think of. Now, some of the other things I've been doing recently, one of the pieces I released just the other day was a panel with Boom, with like a Batman type of explosion on it. And that was a conscious effort to get my head out of the political space. If I think back to pre-Trump days, I was doing generic, things about graffiti, things about fame, things about drugs. And then for the past 2.5, nearly 3 years, my head's been so much in that political space, I needed to get out of it and have some fun. I think as an artist as well, that if your work is critical of society, you can't let that take you over. There is a world outside that, and you have to remind yourself. And that's why I'm doing with the balloons, making things which hopefully are beautiful to look at, look great in people's home. Shit, they're not going to change the world. They're not intended to. Just have fun with it on your wall,
That's awesome. So the balloon piece, is it actually a balloon?
No,
I'm so curious. It looks so real.
Well, if you want to pick that one up, you're welcome to. It's actually cast from an acrylic resin.
Oh, wait.
The mold was from the mold was made from a genuine Mylar balloon.
Oh, cool.
And then they're cast from that, but they're pretty heavy. I think they weigh about 5 pounds.
Oh, wow. You would have no idea.
Oh,
Yeah.
I really didn't know how much it was going to weigh. Okay. Yeah, they're super cool.
This is awesome.
So they're a life-size, plastic replica of a Mylar balloon, and they kind of look pretty cool on the wall. Hopefully people enjoy them, yeah.
I love it. Such a cool piece. You got it, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not tripping on any cords.
So one of the other questions we had for you, you've been starting to work in selling clothes more, a shoe line, you have your shirts. Yeah. Where did that inspiration come from? Was it kind of with Shepard Fairey?
Yeah, Shepard Fairey's been so incredibly successful with Obey clothing, but for me, it was more of a organic transition. I started stop making stupid people famous. I put that on a T-shirt, and over the past 4 or 5 years, I've sold thousands of those T-shirts, and which for a T-shirt company, the number I've sold probably isn't very impressive, but for an artist, it is. It's pretty good. So that kind of showed me that people like messages, these kind of subversive messages on clothing. But the clothing, the collection, which is you guys can actually see on the studio wall there. The idea of that was when I was in my early 20s, I was into new wave music. I was heavily into music. And in terms of style, I would buy my clothes from vintage stores. I'd buy former military clothing and then alter it. I was the guy that would walk into the pub and people would say, hey, look at this weirdo in his cut-off shirt and combat pants and boots or World War II jacket or whatever. I was that guy. Yeah. And I was different. I stood out and I was actually really proud of that. As I've got older, you mellow, and I'm not happy buying my clothes from Urban Outfitters or American Apparel and wearing that and Levi's. I want to go back to that guy that walked in the bar and everybody said, "Wow, that guy's weird." Yeah. So really, that's where the streetwear comes from, and it's also inspired from my experiences as a news photographer. I started in London covering protests and demos and civil unrest and riots, and people on those demonstrations, some of them were living in squats, rundown buildings, working, building this kind of subversive network of anarchists and so on. They had a certain dress code about them, and that dress code showed they were anarchic and rebellious. It was often hoodies and bandanas around their faces, black combat pants, Dr. Martin boots, sometimes with chains hanging and stuff like that. And it says something about those people. And I think our clothes say something about us all. And I think, sadly, our clothes far too often say he shops at Urban Outfitters or, or Gap. We need to get out of that. We need to show what we're wearing. And I think, we need to show what we mean and what we feel by what we're wearing. And I think people are starting to realize this as well, and I think companies are realizing that purely for a commercial basis, this is a good start. like Nike backing Colin Kaepernick, Levi's are putting a lot of money into gun control, as are Toms, the shoe people. People are realizing that people actually want to literally wear their heart on their sleeve in the form of clothes that they wear. They want to align to a political or cultural cause by what they wear. So, if you buy, once the streetwear range my collection is launched, if you buy it, it will say something about you, that you are standing up. You are standing up and questioning authority and establishment. You are prepared to speak out.
I love that. And just like from my perspective as well, I love that as like a younger millennial, I might not be able to afford one of your pieces that were up at Art Basel, but I can still support an artist and someone I respect and look up to and rep a t-shirt and continue on that message. So I really like that you're doing that. I think it's so smart and connects you to your audience even more.
Yeah, I think that's really why I've done it. I do that, and a lot of galleries will say, don't touch low price items. You've got to keep your high prices there. People don't want to see you selling coffee mugs and t-shirts and $150 prints. I say the complete opposite. If somebody likes my work, they have as much right as that multi-millionaire to buy a piece. It shows that they're supporting me, which I appreciate greatly, and couldn't do what I do without. But also, it says something to that person as well, that I'm not there working for. I'll be honest, I get some of my art that's bought by investors and collectors that buy it, they get it shipped, it gets wrapped and gets put in their storage, and they hope that one day I'll be the next Banksy and it'll be worth, literally millions. Mm-hmm. But for me, if somebody comes to me and they send me a direct message or an email and says, hey, I love that print, how much is it? I go back to them with the price, say, oh, dude, I can't afford that at the moment. And then they come back in 6 months later, say, hey, I've been putting money aside from my wages, my pay packet every week or every month. Can I have one of those prints? That means way more than anybody just doing wire transferring thousands for a canvas. That means way more to me.
I think that goes back to your kind of street art philosophy, where art should be for everyone and not just for a select few, which I think is very important, because it should be something that anyone could connect to.
Well, exactly. You asked me earlier about street art in galleries, and I've been to gallery shows where they have street art, and sometimes they'll make a fake concrete wall and they'll get that stenciled by the artists that are there. I mean, it just looks ridiculous. Street art was never intended to be on a plain white wall with spotlights, being viewed by somebody with his arms folded and shaking his chin with a cashmere sweater over his shoulders. That's not what street art was intended for. And the mere fact that street art is illegal, and the statement by doing it, that's a statement in itself. So I think that doesn't come over too well when you're on expensive high-end galleries.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that street art will always be illegal? Or do you think that we're moving towards it being more accepted?
Yeah, it kind of depends. You look at some cities around the world that have got the most amazing murals, mm-hmm. yet they still have rules in terms of vandalism, which is fucking crazy. You can go and put up a 100-foot by 30-foot billboard advertising firearms in some states, alcohol in some states, prostitution in some states, but then you go and write love and peace on an electrical box with a spray can and you get arrested for it. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And in fact, LA itself has this schizophrenic response to street art. There's so many great murals here, and you go down the arts district or you go to Melrose, people go there to see the fucking street art. But the same chief of police is saying that, first of all, the graffiti and taggers come in, and then the prostitutes and the drug dealers come into the area. Well, you got to decide what's good for the city, and I think we know what's good for the city,
Absolutely, because we've talked about it on a few episodes about how there's studies that have been shown that if there's a mural or street art up, those areas tend to actually clear out the drug use and prostitution, because it's bringing more attention, because people want to go and connect and be with the art. And I think there's a huge difference between graffiti and street art.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to see where we are in 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, a good example of that is actually on Melrose Avenue here in LA. There's mm-hmm. a parking lot next to a shoe store, quite famous shoe store called Sporty LA. And when I started doing street art about 6 years ago, that parking lot had, I think homeless people were sleeping in there. There was taggers that were doing it. There was a lot of vandalism going on there. Eddie Donaldson, who's a big name here in street art in LA, started curating it. Since then, it's been moved on to other people. And yeah, the wall panels are, I guess, 8 foot wide or something. And what they do is they allow an artist to have a wall panel for a period of time. So it's actually curated now. And it's become a tourist attraction. You go out there any day and there'll be a whole line of people coming to pose and photograph the street art. And yeah, it's a much more pleasant place now.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we'll post all of these locations that we're talking about on our Instagram, Art World Podcast. If people are looking for you, how do they find you?
The best way is on Instagram, which is @PlasticJesus. For me, that's great because it's very much a visual communication, visual medium, so that works really well. So that's the best place to start. My website is plasticjesus.com, so stuff there in the store there as well if they want to come and buy t-shirts or $10,000 canvases, it's all there.
Yeah.
Something for everyone.
Exactly.
Awesome. Any last questions?
I think I'm good. I just want to say thank you very much for being willing to meet with us and be on our podcast. We were so excited to have you.
It's been my absolute pleasure. It really has.
Lisa's been bragging to everyone in our office.
I have been.
She's like, you know who we're interviewing? Plastic Jesus.
I have,
and they're
every
like,
day.
oh.
I went to my boss. I was like, I'm going to be in like 4 hours late. She was like, okay. And I was like, I have an interview with Plastic Jesus. So, it's a big deal. She was very supportive.
It's funny because I get, I don't, as I say, if I could crawl away and hide from people,
Yeah.
I probably would. And then occasionally I'll get somebody that will post something on Instagram and I'll respond to their post and they post like, oh my God, it's you answered me. And
Yeah.
I just find it all a bit embarrassing.
Well, I'm sorry to embarrass you, but we were amped.
It's so nice, and I think that's one of the things that we like about Instagram is you can connect to these artists that you think you'll never be able to connect to because they're just seem so far away or they're so busy. And then when I think you liked a photo that we posted of one of our other artists wearing your shirt, and we were like, dang, he just liked our photo. We were so excited. And it's that connection that is so, I think people love about art and artists and getting to know them is, who they are. And if they connect to you, you just get very excited.
I think that connection is so important. I get a lot of media requests, whether it's CNN, BBC, Huffington Post, which is great. Obviously, it's great for a business point of view and profile point of view, but the ones which I like are those ones that come from 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade students saying they're studying art, they're getting involved in culture and politics. Could they interview me? They're the ones that mean something.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. All right. Well, we love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.